Good evening, friends. Welcome back once again to the channel Embrace IAS. So today we are going to start with our part 4 of the Vision IAS magazine analysis. Part 4 में we have planned to cover environment and social issues. ठीक है? तो आज का हमारा एजेंडा रहेगा environment and social issues. चलो, let's begin. इसके बाद एक और पार्ट आएगा which will be converting the science completing the science intake and the ethics portion, right? So let's begin. Environment में the first topic is glaciers in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. Now why it is in news? The International Center for Integrated Mountain Development has released a wise report for the Hindu Kush Himalayas. Water, Ice, Society and Ecosystems report. Right? तो हिंदू कुश हिमालयन रीजन कौन सा रीजन है ये भी विल बी सेम. इट इज एक्सप्लेन्ड इन द मैगजीन इटसेल्फ. इसके ऊपर एक रिपोर्ट रिलीज करी है वाटर आइस सोसाइटी एंड इकोसिस्टम्स रिपोर्ट व्हिच हैज बीन रिलीज्ड बाय द इंटरनेशनल सेंटर फॉर इंटीग्रेटेड माउंटेन डेवलपमेंट. राइट, सो दैट वाज द न्यूज़. Now, first of all, let us see what is this organization. It's an intergovernmental knowledge and development organization. So it's an intergovernmental organization. Intergovernmental organization means it's an international organization which is a collaboration of several governments. What all governments are included into it are Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Myanmar, Nepal, and Pakistan. So these are the member countries of ICIMOD. It was established in 1983 and it focuses on climate and environment risk, green economies, and sustainable action. So now, what does this report highlight? उससे पहले देख लेते हैं what are the impacts on the Hindu Kush Himalayas. Impacts from climate change. पहला है adverse impact on biodiversity like genetic and species loss, alteration in the ecosystem structure, increase in the invasive species, range shift, etc. Apart from this, it also has certain socio-economic impact like the crop loss and failure, fodder shortage, livestock deaths, migration, psychological impacts, etc. Then the deposited persistent organic pollutants in glaciers such as PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, are released into the water cycle. So what are persistent organic pollutants? Are such pollutants which have a long shelf life. Okay? Which have a long shelf life. It's not easy to destroy them over a shorter period of time. They take millions of years to be destroyed, and in these millions of years they pollute the entire water cycle. Okay? Decline in albedo will reduce, which will ultimately impact the heat budget of the earth. And what is the albedo? Albedo is the capacity of a surface to absorb heat. Capacity of a surface to absorb heat. And since the capacity of the surface to absorb heat is going to reduce, it will impact the heat budget of the earth. Okay? चलो, now let's see कि इस report की findings क्या है. फिर देखेंगे कि हिंदू कुश हिमालयन region कौन सा. Findings है, number 1 is regarding the glacier. The water glaciers have disappeared 65% faster in 2010s as in the previous decade. This is measuring a complete decade. Okay. For global warming between 1.5 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius by 2100, yeah, 2100, glaciers are said to lose 30 to 50% of their volume compared with 2050. So glaciers are going to lose 30 to 50% of their volume of water. Why? Because they are gonna melt. They are melting at a rate 65% faster in 2010s decade as compared to the previous decade. Coming on to water security, so with accelerated glacier melt, the peak water will be reached around mid-century in most Hindu Kush Himalayan river basins, and the overall water availability is expected to decrease by the end of the century. Now, since the peak water will be reached by mid-century, peak water का मतलब क्या होता है? Peak water is a stage in which the supply of fresh snow water due to glacier melt will be the highest ever. See, glaciers have fresh water trapped in it. स्नो के फॉर्म में या आइस कैप्ड वाटर के फॉर्म में जो वाटर है हमारे पास वो फ्रेश वाटर का एक हिस्सा है, राइट? So as the glaciers are melting at a faster rate, तो ये huge amount of fresh water release होगा और ये फ्रेश वाटर का रिलीज अपने पीक पर पहुंचेगा इन मिड ऑफ दिस सेंचुरी. ठीक, अब नाउ सिंस दिस पीक विल बी रीच्ड इन मिड ऑफ द सेंचुरी, अब क्योंकि फ्रेश वाटर का कोर्स क्या होता है कि थ्रू द रिवर्स इट इज मूविंग टुवर्ड्स द सीज एंड फ्रॉम द सीज इट्स मूविंग टुवर्ड्स द ओशंस. ठीक है, अब जब मिड सेंचुरी में हमने पीक अचीव कर ली है, सो दिस वाटर मूविंग टुवर्ड्स द ओशंस अल्टीमेटली विल कन्वर्ट इनटू द सॉल्ट वाटर एंड विल thus remain not anymore potable to drink. Right now, when it will not remain potable to be drank, so the overall water availability is expected to decrease by the end of this century. मिड सेंचुरी तक हमारे पास पीक फ्रेश वाटर अवेलेबिलिटी हो जाएगी, लेकिन ये अवेलेबिलिटी डिक्रीज हो जाएगी टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ द सेंचुरी, क्योंकि ये सारा फ्रेश वाटर वुड बी कन्वर्टेड इनटू सॉल्ट वाटर. व्हाई? बिकॉज इट विल ड्रेन इनटू द ओशंस. ठीक है, then there are increase in hazards like floods, landslides, large avalanches, glacial lake outburst floods, etc. are projected to increase over the coming decades due to the melting of glaciers. Okay? And there will be a threefold increase in glacial lake outburst floods risk across the Hindu Kush Himalayan range by the end of the 21st century. Right? अब देख लेते हैं हिंदू कुश हिमालय कौन सा रीजन. Hindu Kush Himalayas is a 3,500 kilometer stretch stretching from Afghanistan to Myanmar. You can see it in the diagram over here. यहाँ it's starting from this region of Afghanistan, Amu Darya. Okay, starting from Afghanistan and it's ending up to Myanmar. Right? Starting from Afghanistan and ending up to Myanmar. Ending up to Myanmar. So this covers the region of this Afghanistan. It will cover the region of this Pakistan region, then India, Tibet, China, Nepal, Bhutan, coming down to Myanmar. Over here it will also cover certain areas of Russia. Okay, so this is the basically Hindu Kush Himalayan range. Now this Himalayan range houses the highest mountain ranges in the world and has the largest volume of ice on the earth outside the polar regions. Apart from the polar regions, this is the region that has the largest amount of snow, a largest amount of ice trapped in it. The region is also known as the water towers of Asia. Okay. Now, what is the significance? Now, since it has this large amount of rivers, large amount of glaciers, large amount of ice-tapped water, which is expected to melt due to global warming in this decade. So, this has certain important significances. Number one, it feeds the major rivers like Ganges, Indus, Irrawaddy. It regulates the global climate system as the snow cover cools the atmosphere by reflecting sunlight. So, now, just few minutes ago, we have understood the concept of albedo. Albedo is the surface capacity. Sorry, I think told you it's the capacity to absorb it. It is the capacity to reflect back. It's the capacity to reflect back the heat. So now ice has or snow has the largest amount of albedo than any other surface. ठीक है? तो snow सबसे ज़्यादा sunlight को reflect back कर सकती है because it's a plain surface, it's a smooth surface. Albedo किन conditions पे depend करता है? When sir will be teaching you geography, he'll be teaching you in detail everything. फिलहाल आप इतना जानो कि किसी भी सरफेस की जो कैपेसिटी होती है टू रिफ्लेक्ट बैक द हीट दैट इज टर्म्ड एज albedo. So up since this area is covered with snow and snow has the largest amount of albedo, so it is going to reflect back the sunlight and thus maintain us thus maintain the global climate system, maintain the heat budget of the earth and not large amount of heat is trapped back. ठीक है, cool रखता है उस एरिया को. Then next is provides economic opportunities through recreational activities. Cultural and spiritual importance, for example, the Gangotri Glacier, Yamunotri Glacier, Mapchachung Glacier, all of these, Rudraprayag, Devprayag, Karnaprayag, these all things lie over here. Spiritual importance की चीजें भी यहीं पर है. Then cryosphere components including the permafrost and glacial lakes provide various ecosystem services. ठीक है? So this is the significance of this region. Now, what are the challenges in tackling the deteriorating situations in the Hindu Kush Himalayas? Number one is the poor adaptation capabilities. There are large gaps between the adaptation needs of the communities and their access to the necessary adaptation support due to less financial and technical support. So, the communities that are living over here, they have to adapt to these changes. That is, they need to learn to live with these changes. So to live with these changes, they need to take certain support, certain adaptation methods they have to adopt, for which they aren't able to do this because of the financial and technical constraints, because of lack of financial and technical support. Then there are complex and unpredictable hazards. See, landslides are something that cannot be predicted. Avalanches are something that cannot be predicted. And over and above this, it is a mountainous region. And mountainous regions are generally prone to tectonic activities. So since they are prone to tectonic activities, movement of tectonic plates, this leads to earthquakes. And earthquakes are also a kind of disasters that are unpredictable, right? So you can't predict such disasters and therefore there's huge loss of life and property. Then population growth and infrastructure development has exposed the larger communities to increased hazards. Since these areas are registering population growth and there is infrastructure development in this region, so this is already inviting more and more hazards. Then low protection. About 67% of the ecoregions and 39% of the global biodiversity hotspots are in this region and are still outside the protected areas. Then limited regional cooperation. Hindu Kush Himalayas is spread over multiple countries, leading to issues in data collection and implementing some uniform policies. क्योंकि हर country के अपने country specific concerns होते हैं, so they are not adopting a one size fits all approach for the entire Hindu Kush region. ठीक है, क्योंकि जब भी हम कोई बायोजियोग्राफिकल एरिया देखते हैं तो उसके साथ सबसे बड़ा डायलेमा यही होता है कि इट इज अ लार्ज एरिया. एक बायोम जो होता है वो एक लार्ज एरिया में स्प्रेड होता है and it comprises of several jurisdictions, several political jurisdictions. अब हर political jurisdiction अपनी कुछ issues के साथ होता है और वो हर policy को implement करना अपने यहाँ possible नहीं कर पाता है. So that is the reason why these biomes or biogeographical regions are at a greater threat. क्योंकि एक बड़ा एरिया होता है और ये this is across various political jurisdictions. ठीक है. Then neglect at the international forums. Hindu Kush Himalayas concerns are not given due priority in the international climate discussions such as UNFCC's Conference of Parties. Now, why not given? Again, that thing, political interest होते हैं countries. They are spread across jurisdictions. Okay. Now, what have been the steps taken? India's initiatives, National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem, that is implemented by DST, Department of Science and Technology. Then it is a part of NAPCC, National Action Plan on Climate Change, launched in 2008. This mission for sustaining the Himalayan ecosystem is a part and parcel of the National Action Plan on Climate Change. Then the National Center for Polar and Ocean Researches that has been established by Ministry of Earth Sciences. Then a research station we have set up Himansh at the Chandra Basin in Himachal Pradesh in 2016. Then we have also built up a National Institute of Hydrology that is conducting several studies for the assessment of runoff from the melting of glaciers at catchment and the basin scales. Now, what are the global initiatives? So this ICIMOD's initiatives like the Hindu Kush Himalayan Monitoring and Assessment Program, HIMAP, and mountain ministerial summits, etc. Apart from this, we have framework for regional cooperation by UNDP and ICIMOD. Then UNESCO's World Glacier Monitoring Services. You can just go through them. Not much details are required. Himansh wala point is important. It's an important fact for you. Then Ministry of Earth Sciences का ये National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, you must remember the ministry, right? चलो way forward देखते हैं. फिर से वही positive points, regional and global cooperation are required, improving the monitoring method, building adaptation, adopting integrated water resource management, and the stakeholder engagement. ठीक है? चलो. Moving on to our next topic, that is energy transition. Energy transition means transition to what? So now we are talking about transition from coal-based energy or transition from thermal energy to renewables. Thermal energy to renewables, right? So that is all about this energy transition. Chalo, dekh lete hain what is the news. The World Economic Forum, in collaboration with Accenture, has released a report titled Fostering Effective Energy Transition 2023. Right? So this is a report by World Economic Forum. In this report, an energy transition index has been published. So what is this energy transition index? So it is prepared on the 3 parameters, namely energy equity, energy security, and the sustainable forms of energy transition. Okay? तो इनको three parameters पे रखा गया है. These 3 parameters are important for you to know. क्योंकि ये वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम की रिपोर्ट है, तो इट इज एन इम्पोर्टेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन फॉर यूपीएससी. यू मस्ट नो दीज पैरामीटर्स. 3 पैरामीटर्स पे ये रिपोर्ट बनाई गई है based on equity, security, and sustainability. Now, what are the key findings of this report? Sweden has been placed at the first spot, followed by Norway and Denmark. Energy transition के respect में, the well-performing country is your Sweden, followed by Norway and Denmark. India is ranked at 67th place out of the 120 countries. India and Singapore are the only 2 countries making advances in all aspects of energy system performances. Energy transition has increased each consecutive year over the last decade, but the growth has plateaued in the past 3 years due to rising challenges to equity and inclusiveness of the transition. So the report finds that energy transition has increased each consecutive year in the last decade, but presently this growth has plateaued. This is an increasing growth and this is a plateaued growth, right? It has been increasing the last decade, but it has been stabilized over this period. Why? Because there are issues related to energy equity and inclusiveness of energy transition. Okay? About energy transition. It refers to the global energy sector's shift from a fossil-based system of energy production to the renewable. I've already told you this. Now moving on to World Economic Forum. Important organization once again for UPSC. UPSC has been interested in this organization both in the prelims as well as in the mains. Okay? So it's important for you. Established in 1971 as a not-for-profit foundation, it is the international organization for public-private cooperation. So it's not only an intergovernmental organization, it also has the participation of private sector in it. What are the objectives? Wait for a second. Yes. What are the objectives? It engages the foremost political, business, cultural, and other leaders of the society to shape the global, regional, and industry agendas. key areas of focus are the fourth industrial revolution, solving the problems of global commons, and addressing the global security issues. Now, what do you mean by fourth industrial revolution? The fourth industrial revolution talks about is basically the transition to the digital economy. Transition to the digital economy. Okay, this is the fourth industrial revolution. So areas of focus are the world's transition to digital economy, then solving the problems of global commons. Global commons are the goods or are the services that are the global rights of everybody, like health, education, energy, climate, environment, biodiversity. Okay, these are the global commons. Then it also has to address the global security issues. Membership more than 390 firms from over 60 countries. Membership is by invitation only. Major reports, Global Competitiveness Index, Global Gender Gap Report. Major initiatives, G20 Global Smart Cities Alliance, and Giving to Amplify Earth Action, that is GAEA. All these reports and initiatives are important for you to remember by name, World Economic Forum initiatives. Okay. Now, what is the need for energy transition in India? Reducing emissions and tackling the global warming, right? This is one of the need. It's self-explanatory, not to explain much. Then the environmental impact of the fossil fuels is one of the problems. Fulfilling the international commitments. Under we have made the indices we have gave out the Panchamrit pledge, achieving 50% energy from the non-fossil fuel by 2030, net zero emissions by 2070. This Panchamrit pledge I have discussed in detail when I have given the explanation in the Yojana magazine. You can go back and watch to it. जब life mission हमने discuss किया था, I have discussed in it the Panchamrit pledge very well. ठीक है? आप देख सकते हो पंचामृत प्लेज हमारा एक इंटरनेशनल कमिटमेंट है, ग्लोबल कमिटमेंट है. So to fulfill all these things, we need an energy transition to the renewables, right? The next is reduced energy dependency on other nations on imports to overcome issues like supply chain volatilities. For instance, the recent economic and geopolitical developments such as the Ukraine crisis have led to high fuel prices, reducing the accessibility of energy. Then talking about making energy accessible and affordable and creating green jobs. International Renewable Energy Agency's Global Energy Transition Outlook estimates that 43 million people could be employed in the renewable energy sector by 2050. Okay. Now, what are India's efforts towards energy transition? Policy framework we have National Offshore Wind Energy Policy, National Wind Solar Hybrid Policy, Green Hydrogen and Green Ammonia Policy, Energy Conservation and Sustainable Building Code. Then regarding schemes and initiatives, we have National Solar Mission, National Green Hydrogen Mission, Renewable Purchase Obligation under Renewable Energy Certificate Scheme, Green Term Ahead Market to provide enhanced revenues for the sale of renewables, Carbon Credit Trading System. What is Carbon Credit System? When I have explained Yojana, फिर से वही life वाली scheme के explanation में almost many of these schemes are covered in it. ठीक है? International cooperation, International and Solar Alliance, and One Sun, One Grid, One World, One Grid program, Mission Integrated Biorefineries under the Mission Innovation, World Bank's first low carbon energy programmatic development policy operation. So these are the efforts that India have been taking towards energy transition. In detail in efforts में ज्यादा नहीं जाना है. हाँ, कुछ missions हैं जो इंडिया के important है. This is National Solar Mission, National Green Hydrogen Mission. So we'll be making a separate video on it. ठीक है, don't worry. बाकी वो जो document will be provided, उसमें सारी चीजें होंगी. Then coming on to the challenges that are faced in the area of energy transition. So as regards the challenges, we'll see. When I've taught you Yojana, तो उसमें एक चीज I've explained you कि whenever a country is a developing country, उसके आगे dilemma होता है between development and environment. Now, since it has this dilemma, it has to choose any one of them. but any one of them is a very hard choice to make. तो क्या करता है, वो बैलेंस करने की कोशिश करता है, वो डेवलपमेंट को भी कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं कर सकता, एंड सिंस इट नीड्स अ सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट, तो वो एनवायरनमेंट को भी कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं कर सकता. तो इट मूव्स टुवर्ड्स द आइडिया ऑफ सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट, दैट इज इट इज डेवलपिंग बट ऑल्सो टेकिंग केयर ऑफ द एनवायरनमेंट साइमल्टेनियसली. ठीक. तो हमारा जो चैलेंज आता है, वो पहला चैलेंज यही है कि हमारा अभी भी 50% ऑफ द टोटल इंस्टॉल कैपेसिटी इज फ्रॉम द कन्वेंशनल सोर्सेज, एंड वी कैन नॉट एट रैंडम स्टॉप दिस. ठीक. दूसरा आता है फाइनेंशियल कॉन्स्ट्रेंट्स. As per some estimates, the cumulative investment of up to 6 to 8 trillion US dollars will be required during 2015 to 2030 to transform the current energy systems in India. The recently released Low-Cost Finance for Energy Transition report by IRENA in close collaboration with Ministry of New and Renewable Energy also highlight the need for an increase in the availability of low-cost capital in the G20 countries and beyond for the energy transition. Apart from this, there is low private sector participation in India in this energy transition work. Then we also have to ensure just transition so that the transition does not exacerbate the economic vulnerabilities of the sectors and workers engaged in the fossil fuel supply chains. Then ambitions and implementation gaps between the center and the states. The goal sets at national level could be misaligned with the state priorities. That is, like if certain state is rich in coal, उस स्टेट की इकोनॉमी तो उसके कोल से ही चल रही है, तो गोल्स इस तरीके से सेट करने हैं कि दे आर नॉट मिसअलाइंड विद द स्टेट्स प्रायोरिटीज एंड स्टेट आर नॉट गोइंग इनटू अ लॉस बिकॉज ऑफ इट. ठीक है. Further, energy transition can exacerbate legacy issues in electricity sector such as high discom losses, and it can impact the state economy. Same point which I have explained you. The next is availability of technology. India still lacks the capability of manufacturing at large scale low carbon technologies, especially in the segments of offshore wind, hydrogen electrolyzers, energy storage, etc. What is just transition? I've already explained you. You can have a reading over it. Then the inadequate infrastructure such as the energy storage system, grid connectivity, transmission networks, etc. Talking about way forward, again, those will be some common positive points. You can read it on your own. Closing inefficient fossil fuel-based thermal power plants, adopting blended finance structures with private sector capital, as well as the public sector contribution. Then effective innovation framework, promoting R&D for frontier technologies, international collaboration through mechanisms such as Just Energy Transition Partnership. These are the financing cooperation mechanisms that help heavily coal-dependent economies to make a just energy transition and address the social consequences of transitioning. Then create a state-level framework for energy transition to enhance the participation of states through adequate plans, actions, and governance processes. Then collecting adequate data about the sectors, people, etc., who will be impacted by the energy transition and forming effective policies for reskilling and redeployment of manpower. Right? Then next is the related news. Tracking SDG 7, the Energy Progress Report. It was released by the collaboration between International Energy Agency, International Renewable Energy Agency, United Nations Statistics Division, the World Bank, and the WHO. Again, this report becomes important because of these collaborative agencies. SDG 7 provides for achieving affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. The current pace is not adequate to achieve any of the 2030 targets. Global access to electricity between 10 to 21 grew from 84% of the world population to 91%. Then to enable an energy system aligned with 1.5 degrees Celsius target, the share of the renewables in global energy mix must reach 33 to 38% by 2030 from the current 19.1% in 2020. India alone accounts for the largest share of the access deficit, defined as population lacking access to electricity. So India alone is responsible for the largest share of access deficit. That is the deficit in the access of electricity, with 505 million people lacking access, followed by China. This is because of their huge population. Okay, China भी इसमें involved है, मतलब it is because of huge population. Okay. Okay, so done with this topic. Now our next topic is the coal-based thermal power plants emission norms compliance. अभी हमने एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन देखा था, अब हमारा जो नेक्स्ट टॉपिक है वो है थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स के लिए, कोल बेस्ड थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स के लिए कुछ एमिशन नॉर्म्स आए हैं. Why news? Center for Science and Environment, an environmental NGO. Remember, CSE is an NGO. Assess the status of a compliance of coal-fired thermal power plants with sulfur dioxide or sulfur oxides emissions norm. So it has recently assessed that at what rate are the coal-fired thermal power plants implementing the emission norms for the sulfur oxides emissions. So पहले देख लेते हैं. Okay, उससे पहले let's see more about this news. फिर का CEA पे बात करेंगे. So the report is based on the data provided by Central Electricity Authority under the Ministry of Power. CSE has done assessment based on the installation of flue gas desulfurization at thermal power plants. So flue gas desulfurization is basically a mechanism that is trying to eliminate the gas that is being released, the amount of emissions that are being released from the coal-based thermal power plants. This is a process to eliminate the amount of sulfur oxides present in this emission. This process absorbs sulfur oxide and they desulfurize them. ताकि ये जो emission हो रहा है, this is free of at least sulfur oxides. ठीक है? So it has assessed on the basis of at what level are flue gas desulfurization methods being complied with by the thermal power plants. तो सेंट्रल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी अथॉरिटी के दिए हुए डेटा पर ये रिपोर्ट बेस्ड है. क्या है सेंट्रल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी अथॉरिटी? स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी है, made under the Electricity Act 2003, and this is under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Power. This is under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Power. Vision of this body is to ensure reliable 24/7 power supply of adequate quality to all the consumers in the country. Recent steps in National Electricity Plan for the period of 2022-32, guidelines on design, construction, O&M, and annual certification of coal ash ponds. Objective is it advises the central government on the matters relating to the national electricity policy and formulate the short-term and perspective plans for the development of electricity system. Apart from it, it also has the function to specify the technical standards and safety requirements for electrical plants and electrical lines. It also specifies the grid standards and collects and records data concerning the generation, trading, distribution, and utilization of electricity. It consists of not more than 14 members, including the chairperson who holds the office during the pleasure of the central government. Right? So this is all about this body. As regards these facts, you need to remember it well because they are very important for APSC since it's a statutory body. As statutory body are a part of the steps. Major findings of this report are that only 5% of the coal power capacity has complied with the emission norms so far, which is again a disturbing report. And then 17% of the overall power capacity was still at very initial stages of compliance. 5% ने तो अभी तक comply, only 5% have complied till date, and out of those also, only 17% were in the initial, like only 17% of the coal power capacities are at initial stage of compliance. Okay. Now, regarding what are the norms which have been talked about. So, norms for thermal power plants are, so in 2015, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has first time introduced environmental emission standards for controlling sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and mercury emissions from coal-based thermal power plants under the EPA, Environment Protection Act. So under EPA, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has for the first time introduced the environmental emission standards in 2015. They were targeted at reducing the sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and the mercury emission from the coal-based thermal power plants. In 2021, the government extended the timelines for majority of coal-based power plants in India. Now, there were three categorization with three different deadlines. Category A within 10-kilometer radius of Delhi NCR and cities population more than 10 lakh. So, कैटेगरी ए में वो एरियाज फॉल करते हैं जो कि दिल्ली एनसीआर के 10 किलोमीटर के रेंज में है एंड द सिटीज व्हिच आर विद द पॉपुलेशन ऑफ मोर देन 10 लाख. डेडलाइंस वर या चेंज डेडलाइंस आर अप टू 2024. कैटेगरी बी में आती हैं the 10-kilometer radius of critically polluted areas or non-attainment cities, the cities that have failed to meet the national ambient air quality standards. So these national ambient air quality standards are certain set of standards that are being given for these cities to comply with, that their air quality must consist some amount of persistent organic pollutants की कुछ qualities दे रखी हैं, सल्फर डाइऑक्साइड की कुछ क्वालिटीज, NOx की कुछ क्वालिटीज दे रखी है, नाइट्रोजन ऑक्साइड्स की कि जितनी उस एयर में होनी चाहिए. तो जो नॉन अटेनमेंट सिटीज हैं, लाइक जो सिटीज इन स्टैंडर्ड्स को मीट नहीं कर पा रही हैं या जो सिटीज क्रिटिकली पॉल्यूटेड एरियाज के 10 किलोमीटर रेडियस में फॉल करती हैं, दे कम इन कैटेगरी बी. उनके लिए डेडलाइन को एक्सटेंड किया है 2025 तक. And then the power plants in all other cities, the deadline have been extended till 2026. The priority basis for deadline extend की गई. The power plant units declared to retire before December 31 will not be required to meet the specified norms. So the thermal power plants, this is an important point, the thermal power plants that have been declared that they are to retire before 2027, they will not be required to meet these norms. So this is how they have balanced development and environment. तो ऐसे power plants जिन्होंने already announce कर दिया है कि वो retire होने वाले हैं before 2027, these plants will be off or off of their function. So those plants do not have to comply with these regulations. But again, this has one of the negative part of it कि इससे होगा क्या कि these plants will be emitting more than what should not be done. Okay, so this is a positive point as well as a negative point. Now on water use, wait for a second. Yes, so on water use, all plants with once-through cooling shall install the cooling towers. All plants with once-through cooling shall install the cooling towers. There is a temperature limit for discharge of condenser cooling water from the thermal power plants. See, thermal power plants, while they function, they have a large amount of water reserves. This water basically acts as a coolant for those plants, so that more amount of heat is when generated, it could act as a moderator and could moderate that heat. Now, this water is when released into the water bodies. It pollutes the water because it has certain toxic chemicals. Right? So, instead of these condenser cooling waters, they must install what? Cooling towers. Okay? Use of beneficiated coal. The aim is to minimize the fly ash generation. The coal beneficiation is a process through which the combustion attribute of the coal is enhanced by separating the inorganic impurities, that is volatile matter or ash, from the raw coal. So by removing the impurities, coal beneficiation का मतलब है you have to purify the coal more and more. ठीक है? Existing coal जो आप extract करते हो, that has certain impurities, right? So to remove those impurities and then burn that pure coal so that less of the fly ash is generated. That is the aim over here. Each thermal power plant generating station should achieve 100% utilization of total ash generated at plant. ठीक है, तो उन्हें जितना भी फ्लाई एश वो जनरेट कर रहे हैं उसको 100% यूटिलाइज कर देना है. इट शुड नॉट अफेक्ट द एनवायरमेंट. Then pollution controlling technologies at different stages of a power plant's operation. Pre-combustion, you need coal washing and blending. Again, that same thing to remove the impurities of it. Before burning it, you need to remove the impurities. In combustion, installation of low nitrogen oxides burner and overfire air inside the boiler are in combustion controls available for nitrogen oxides. The burners which release less of the nitrogen oxides should be used. And over the fire air, that is for combustion of this, you do not need some external fuels. Okay. Then limestone injection to the furnace is an effective in combustion control applicable for sulfur oxides reduction. So sulfur oxides reduction can be neutralized if you are injecting limestone into the furnace. So these are some in combustion methods, that is while the combustion is going on. Then post combustion, the technologies available are sulfur oxides emission के लिए flue gas desulfurization, we have discussed it. Nitrogen oxides emission के लिए selective catalytic or non-catalytic reduction, that is the emission that is being made from these plants have to undergo catalytic or non-catalytic reduction. What is this? We will be studying in science and tech when we will be studying the static areas in detail. Okay. Particulate matter emission, electrostatic precipitators for large particulate matter or fabric filters, so that these particulate matters do not enter into the atmosphere or the air. Now, what are the challenges? Number one, you require high investment. Again, there are financial constraints. Then the import of pollution control technology equipment. Certain components of flue gas desulfurizations are not manufactured in India, and there is a lack of bidders for the supply of flue gas desulfurization. Then also due to deadlines, there is a lack of time in developing the indigenous manufacturing facility in the country. Okay, we have near deadlines 2025, 26, 27 तक की deadlines है. So we do not have enough time to develop indigenous technology. We have to import it. Okay. Then the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, it has delayed the entire process of planning, tendering and implementing the flue gas desulfurization. Then meager penalty for violating the emission norms. The power plant continues to function even if they are failing to achieve the emission norms. And इसके अलावा जो 2027 तक जो plants retire होने हैं उनके ऊपर emission norms apply भी नहीं हो रहे. So these are some of the regulatory glitches that are coming in front in the form of challenges. Suggestions: disincentivize or incentivize the plants. That is, disincentivize when they are not meeting their targets of controlling emissions, and incentivize also equally when they are actually achieving their targets. Okay. Then collaboration. Central Electricity Authority and Ministry of Power should work in tandem and ensure that the thermal power plants implement norms that are good for environment. Then emission data should be transparently published and available with the departments. Then provide 1-year grant window or the subsidy scheme. That is, this should be done to expedite the implementation of norms to enable the fundraising for high upfront cost. So 1-year grant window, that is, आपको जो भी implement करना है उसके लिए 1-year grant window, तो एक year तक आपको implementation करने के लिए government grant दे रही है, तो एक तरीके से एक subsidy दे रही है. ठीक है, and post this you have to continue this kind of accepting those technologies. Then removal of the tax levied on imported pollution control technologies. So pollution control technologies के import पे they should remove the tax that has been levied. This would increase the bidders on clean energy technology. Okay. Sure. This topic is done. Now let us see the topic on disaster management. So why is disaster management framework of India in use? Ministry of Home Affairs has recently announced 3 major schemes worth more than 8,000 crores for disaster management. तो Ministry of Home Affairs ने 3 schemes दी हैं for disaster management. Institutional mechanism क्या है इंडिया में under the Disaster Management Act? तो national level पे एनडीए में है हमारे पास National Disaster Management Authority. ऐसे ही state level पर एसडीए में है State Disaster Management Authority. एंड डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे डीडीए में है डिस्ट्रिक्ट नेशनल डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटी. इसके अलावा वी हैव एन एग्जीक्यूटिव कमिटी अगेन एट द डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल एज वेल एज एट द स्टेट लेवल. डिस्ट्रिक्ट सॉरी नेशनल लेवल एज वेल एज द स्टेट लेवल. डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे ये एग्जीक्यूटिव कमिटी नहीं होती है. डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे पॉइंट इन चार्ज कौन होता है? द डिप्टी कमिश्नर और द डिस्ट्रिक्ट मजिस्ट्रेट. फिर नेशनल डिजास्टर रिस्पांस फोर्स एंड स्टेट डिजास्टर रिस्पांस फोर्स. ठीक है. So this is the institutional framework that we have for disaster management in India. The schemes that were launched at a meeting conducted with the states or union territories administrations under Vision at the rate 2047 to further strengthen the disaster risk reduction system in the country to make India disaster resilient. 3 major schemes जो हैं, they include number 1, the 2,500 crore project to reduce the risk of urban flooding. अर्बन फ्लडिंग के लिए एक स्कीम आई है जो कि 7 मोस्ट पॉपुलस मेट्रोज के लिए ही है. मुंबई, चेन्नई, कोलकाता, बेंगलुरु, हैदराबाद, अहमदाबाद एंड sadly Delhi isn't included in it and Delhi is one of the glaring examples of urban flooding. ठीक है. तो 7 मोस्ट पॉपुलस मेट्रोज में ये कंफ्यूज होगा क्योंकि दिल्ली पे सबसे ज्यादा न्यूज़ेस आती हैं फॉर अर्बन फ्लडिंग, लेकिन दिल्ली इज नॉट इंक्लूडेड इन दिस प्रोजेक्ट. ठीक है. तो अर्बन फ्लडिंग को लेके पहला प्रोजेक्ट है 7 मोस्ट पॉपुलस मेट्रोज के लिए. अक्रॉस द कंट्री ये प्रोजेक्ट नहीं. दूसरा प्रोजेक्ट है ऑन नेशनल लैंडस्लाइड रिस्क मिटिगेशन फॉर 17 स्टेट्स एंड यूटीज. सो सेकंड स्कीम भी आपकी ओवरऑल पूरे नेशन के लिए नहीं. देन थर्ड है द 5,000 crore project to expand and modernize fire services across the states. This is country wide. ठीक है. तो 3 स्कीम्स आई हैं. पहली आई है अर्बन फ्लडिंग पे जो कि 7 मोस्ट पॉपुलस मेट्रोज में जिसमें कि दिल्ली शामिल नहीं. ठीक. दूसरी स्कीम आई है आपकी लैंडस्लाइड मिटिगेशन पे जो कि 17 स्टेट्स और यूटीज को कवर करती है, ऑल इंडिया नहीं. तीसरी आई है फायर सेफ्टी मैकेनिज्म को स्ट्रेंथन करने के लिए जो कि ऑल इंडिया स्कीम है. ठीक है. Also, the ministry highlighted that the approach to disaster management in the country has been improved by replacing the earlier approach of reactionary and relief centric with a holistic and integrating management approach. तो इनिशियली हमारी अप्रोच जो होती थी वो होती थी जब डिजास्टर हो गया तब वी आर रिएक्टिंग ऑन इट एंड वी आर फोकसिंग ऑन द रिलीफ मेजर्स. नाउ वी आर improving it by improving the mechanisms of disaster reduction. Okay. Sure. The next is steps taken in India to move away from reactionary and relief centric approach. The pehla hai we have made a holistic approach for disaster management focusing on prevention, mitigation and preparedness based disaster management. Establishing a National Disaster Mitigation Fund and State Disaster Mitigation Fund in 2021. Undertaking prevention activities like planting of saplings on the banks of 13 major rivers which are prone to floods. Developing advanced early warning systems. IMD has issued 5 days advance forecast of rainfall and flood. Then enhanced and proactive fund allocation. The release of funds to NDRF has increased nearly 3 times. Promoting the use of ICT in common alerting protocol through SMS, disaster management information systems, and emergency response support systems. Then there has been seen cooperation between the state and union, involvement of communities at the grassroots level. For instance, the scheme for training of community volunteers in disaster response, Apada Mitra, has set a target of preparing around 1 lakh youth volunteers in 350 high-risk disaster-prone areas. Other initiatives or policies like National Disaster Management Plan 2016 and the National Policy on Disaster Management 2009. NDMA guidelines for disasters like earthquakes, cold waves, cyclones, etc. And Prime Minister has also released a 10-point agenda on the disaster risk reduction. Apart from this, we have National Disaster Response Fund managed by the central government. Similarly, same point है यहाँ पे हमने अभी discuss किया था, State Disaster Response Fund भी है. Then India is a signatory to the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. This terminology is important for your prelims. Sendai Framework is related to the disaster management. Then India has launched a multi-stakeholder global partnership, the Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure, in 2019. CDRI is a disaster risk reduction infrastructure building in 2019. We have launched this system. Now, what are the challenges? First challenge here is poor coordination among the multiple agencies. Okay, so institutions like NDMA and National Executive Council, as well as union and state governments, often overlap. So there is lack of coordination. Lack of coordination. Then slow progress at the district level. District disaster management plans in 87 districts of 8 states are still pending. Limited integration of climate change into the risk reduction plans. Capacity building and training की problems है. For this, we have come up with Apada Mitra. Okay. Then inadequate early warning systems, lack of infrastructure, and other issues like limited public awareness and weak compliance of the policies. Then moving ahead, coming on to way forward. Again, the same point, strengthening coordination mechanism, integrating climate change impact into the disaster plans, promoting community-based disaster preparedness, training programs, improving and expanding the early warning systems. Chalo, CDRI देख लेते हैं. CDRI is an important initiative for your prelims as well as for your mains. Cabinet has approved the ratification of headquarters agreement between India and CDRI. In 2022, Cabinet had approved recognition of CDRI as an international organization and for signing of HQA for granting CDRI exemptions, immunities, and privileges as contemplated under Section 3 of the United Nations Act. Act was enacted to give effect to Convention on the Privileges and Immunities of the United Nations adopted by UN General Assembly in 1946. The UN Charter allows UN and also its officials to enjoy the territory of each of its members, such as in legal capacity, privileges, and immunities, which are necessary for the exercise of its functions. So, हुआ क्या है कि recently कैबिनेट ने जो हेडक्वार्टर्स रैटिफिकेशन ऑफ हेडक्वार्टर्स अग्रीमेंट है HQA उसको अप्रूव कर दिया है बिटवीन इंडिया एंड CDRI, क्योंकि इंडिया लाइक CDRI को एक इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन टैग कर दिया गया है इन 2002 बाय द कैबिनेट. स्टार्ट इंडिया ने किया था, बट अब ये एक इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, तो उस इफेक्ट में क्या है, इसको ratification of headquarters agreement के साथ कोलैब करना पड़ेगा. And this agreement is basically mandated under United Nations Privileges and Immunities Act 1947, under which the UN Charter allows all the members of such a participation the legal rights and privileges and immunities to function in the jurisdiction of other political countries involved in this partnership for the purpose of complying with the initiative. Okay. Section 3 of the Act states that premises of UN shall be inviolable. The Act was also extended to several other international organizations. Signing of HQA will provide CDRI an independent and international legal persona so that it can carry out its functions internationally more efficiently. It will allow the CDRI to depute the experts and also bring in experts from member countries to India. ठीक, तो वही सारी चीजें हैं कि अगर हम ये इम्पैक्ट साइन कर लेते हैं, सॉरी ये अग्रीमेंट साइन कर लेते हैं, तो व्हाट विल हैपन इज कि इस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को लीगली एक इंटरनेशनल रिकग्निशन मिलेगी and the members of this organization will be free to work for the purpose of disaster management across the political jurisdictions. ठीक, CDRI के headquarters जो है वो न्यू दिल्ली में है. It is a global partnership of national governments that was launched in 2019 by Indian Prime Minister at UN Climate Action Summit in New York. Objective is resilience of infrastructure systems to climate and disaster risks. Membership currently 31 countries, 6 international organizations and 2 private sector organizations. ठीक, तो इसमें ये याद रखना है, गवर्नमेंट्स का पार्टिसिपेशन भी है, इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस का पार्टिसिपेशन भी है एंड प्राइवेट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस का भी पार्टिसिपेशन. Other key information, it will work at intersection of Sendai framework and Paris climate. ठीक है. अब देख लेते हैं अर्बन फ्लड्स पे, क्योंकि एक स्कीम हमारी अर्बन फ्लड्स पे है, एक लैंडस्लाइड्स पे है और एक फायर सेफ्टी मेजर्स पे है. अर्बन floods. Urban floods are defined as excessive runoff in developed urban areas. Nothing to be explained much. It causes inundations. Significantly different from the rural flooding, as the developed catchment of urban areas increase the flood peaks from 1.8 to 8 times and flood volumes by up to 6 times. Rural flooding से ये इसलिए different होती है क्योंकि we have catchments development. मतलब जो रिवर कैचमेंट एरियाज हैं, जो बैंक्स ऑफ द रिवर्स हैं, वहां पर ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ डेवलपमेंट हो चुका होता है, जिसकी वजह से वो जो रिस्ट्रिक्टेड वाटर होता है वो ह्यूज अमाउंट्स ऑफ कैजुअलिटीज क्रिएट करता है इन द अर्बन एरियाज. ठीक है. एग्जांपल्स हैं न्यू दिल्ली, बेंगलुरु एंड हैदराबाद. इनको हम फ्लैश फ्लड्स भी बोलते हैं, जो कि सिटी के अंदर आते हैं ड्यू टू हेवी रेन्स. Current challenges: global climate change and the urban heat island effect. Urban heat island effect is the excessive heating of the continental areas. Continental areas matlab that are surrounded by continents from all sides. So excessive heating of the continental areas due to global warming. High intensity rainfall events. Drainage infrastructure becoming easily overwhelmed due to inadequate capacity and poor maintenance. Unplanned development and poor land use planning in the cities. Lack of financial resources for implementing effective flood management strategies. कोई challenges हैं? Same. Financial constraints हैं, political constraints हैं, policy related constraints हैं. ठीक है. Initiatives to tackle the urban flooding. Standard operating procedures for. Wait for a second. Yes. Standard operating procedures for the mitigating of urban flooding by central government under AMRUT, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation of Cities. So SOPs have been released to mitigate the urban flooding by central government under AMRUT scheme. Then flood management program has been come up for different states. National guidelines on management on urban flooding by NDMA. Uniform system of alerts and warnings by Ministry of Home Affairs, categorized in yellow warning, red alert, orange alert or red alert. Integrated flood warning systems like I-flows of Mumbai. Similar system has also been introduced in Chennai, named as C-flows. These are the flood warning systems, ICT-based flood warning systems. Way forward, again the same things: adopting integrated ecological approach, enhancing capacity of drainage system, creating detailed flood hazard zonation maps, and conservation and restoration of the urban water bodies. Coming on to the fire. In India, the fire accidents are often witnessed in densely populated urban areas, congested markets, factories, slums, residential buildings, and public transport systems, causing widespread destruction and loss of life and property. Then examples are commercial complex fire in Secunderabad, Hyderabad, hotel fire in Karol Bagh, Delhi, Upahar cinema fires in New Delhi in 1997. Fire safety regulations in India. How does the fire safety regulation in India work is the Model Fire Bill 2019, which aims at bringing uniform law across the states for maintenance of fire and emergency services. Then National Building Code of India 2016, which has been published by Bureau of Indian Standards. It contains detailed provisions under Part 4, Fire and Life Safety. In 2022, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare had circulated strict guidelines stipulating third-party accreditation for fire safety. Third-party accreditation involves, apart from government and the policy measures, we also need some kind of expert accreditation on fire safety measures. Then NDMA has stipulated requirements for fire safety in public buildings and included hospitals. So all these are regulations in India, but none of these are binding. That is one of the greatest flaw. None of these are binding. ये सिर्फ एक तरीके से guidelines. ठीक है? What are the current challenges? Number one, poor enforcement. Number two, lack of uniformity in rules. Number three, capacity and resource constraints in the local governments. Number three, the infrastructure issues like narrow lanes in densely populated areas, which limit the access to a site by the fire brigade services. Then negligence and low awareness among citizens. And citizens even don't know how to deal with the fire accidents. Way forward, enactment and enforcement of a uniform fire safety law in every state, enhanced capacity through awareness and mock drills, technological upgradation like the use of automatic smoke alarms, sprinklers, gas leakage alarm, etc. with built-in fire suppression systems, mainstreaming of fire risk mitigation and management, conducting regular fire safety audits and proper evaluation and scrutiny before the sanction and renewal of the permits. Okay? Nothing much to explain over here. अब ये है थोड़ा सा important topic, cloud seeding. What is cloud seeding? So why in news? Recently, IIT Kanpur has successfully conducted a test flight for cloud seeding. What is cloud seeding? Take that. Cloud seeding is a kind of weather modification technology to create artificial rains. Artificial rains create करके how can the weather be moderated या how can the weather be modified? See, rains are what they're doing is rains are bringing the condensed clouds on the earth. तो रेन से बेसिकली होता क्या है कि जो पॉल्यूशन एरोजोल्स होते हैं एटमॉस्फेयर, जो कि एरोजोल्स रिफ्लेक्ट बैक करते हैं टू ऑल दोज pollutants या they absorb all those pollutants, तो उन एरोजोल्स के अमाउंट को बढ़ा देता है एयर, right? So they act as a deterrent to the pollutants in the atmosphere. इसीलिए आर्टिफिशियल रेन्स कराने का जो मेथड है दैट इज सजेस्टेड एज वन ऑफ द मेथड्स टू रिड्यूस पोल्यूशन. ठीक है? Rain happens when moisture in the air reaches levels at which it can no longer be held. Cloud seeding aims to facilitate and accelerate that process by making available the chemical nuclei around which the condensation can take place. It works only when there is enough pre-existing clouds in the atmosphere. This is important. It works only when a large amount of pre-existing clouds are present in the atmosphere. Now, there are two ways of adding nuclei particles to the clouds. Number one, you can use large cannons that can shoot particles into the sky. And number two, you can use airplanes that can drop the particles from above. ठीक, तो ये जो केमिकल न्यूक्लियाई वो प्रोवाइड करा रहे हैं जिसके अराउंड उन्हें कंडेंसेशन कराना है. सबसे पहली कंडीशन तो ये है जब इनफ नंबर ऑफ क्लाउड्स अवेलेबल होंगे तभी वो इस केमिकल न्यूक्लियाई को इंजेक्ट करके आर्टिफिशियल रेन्स करा सकते हैं. इसके अलावा वो नहीं करा सकते. ये कराने के दो तरीके हैं. पहला, एक ऑन ग्राउंड कैनन ले सकते हैं वो जो कि शूट करे इस केमिकल न्यूक्लियाई को टुवर्ड्स द स्काई. दूसरा प्रोसीजर उनका हो सकता है कि दे कैन take airplanes which can drop particles from the upper atmosphere into these clouds. Okay, so these are the two ways. IIT Kanpur has used the way of airplanes. Cloud aerosol interaction and precipitation enhancement experiment CAIPEX 4 was conducted during 2 consecutive monsoon seasons of 2008 and 2019 over Solapur, Maharashtra. So CAIPEX 4 experiment is important for you. Maharashtra में conduct किया गया है, and this is related to cloud seeding. ठीक है? Mainly 8 chemicals can be used: silver iodide, dry ice, potassium iodide, propane, calcium carbide, ammonium nitrate, sodium chloride और यूरिया कंपाउंड. ठीक, ये 8 chemicals यूज किए जा सकते हैं क्लाउड सीडिंग में. देख लेते हैं एक बार प्रोसीजर क्या है. Wait for a second. Yes. तो देखो, ऑलरेडी लार्ज नंबर ऑफ क्लाउड्स आर प्रेजेंट. आर्टिफिशियली ये क्लाउड्स नहीं क्रिएट कर सकते. ये वो प्लेटफॉर्म दे सकते हैं जिससे कि कंडेंसेशन कैन हेल्प फास्टर. एक तरीके से इट इज वर्किंग एज अ कैटलिस्ट. ठीक है. होता क्या है, these are already huge number of clouds present and aircraft injects silver iodide or other substances into the atmosphere. तो 8 केमिकल्स जो हमने देखे थे उनमें से कुछ भी इंजेक्ट कर सकता है. इस एक्सपेरिमेंट में जो आईआईटी कानपुर ने कंडक्ट किया उसमें दे हैव इंजेक्टेड सिल्वर आयोडाइड. The chemicals mimic the particles that serve as surfaces for condensation that creates water droplets. तो ये जो 8 पार्टिकल्स हैं ये बेसिकली कंडेंसेशन न्यूक्लियाई का काम करते हैं जिसके अराउंड कंडेंसेशन टेक्स प्लेस. ठीक है. तो ये वर्क करना शुरू करेंगे. Once the condensation creates water droplets that are large enough, the rain will start falling. Simple से procedure है. You are injecting any artificial chemical that will work as a condensation nuclei, and this is what the entire process is all about. Condensation nuclei बनाना है. Condensation की process को as a catalyst आपको enhance कर देना है जिससे कि बारिश higher amount में आ सके. Then what are the benefits of cloud seeding? So number one is drought management. Useful technique for drought affected areas. As per IMD, 87% of India's districts are vulnerable to droughts. Then for clearing fog in the airports. Due to fog season, many flights get affected due to lowering visibility. The cloud seeding technique can help to improve this visibility. Fighting forest fires. Best way to fight forest fires is cloud seeding. That is rainfall. 35.46% of the forest cover is prone to forest fires in India. Then to suppress the hailstorms, to divert the rainfall, and to improve water availability. Now, what are the issues in it? First issue is bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation is the process by which एक chemical जब atmosphere की किसी भी part में enter कर जाता है या किसी water body में enter कर जाता है, atmosphere में enter कर जाता है, तो throughout the period it tries to enhance itself. ठीक है, throughout the period it tries to enhance itself. And now when it is enhancing itself, it increases its number, it increases its effect in that atmospheric parlance. ठीक है. तो बायो एक्यूमुलेशन का थ्रेट क्यों है? क्योंकि सिल्वर आयोडाइड केमिकल जो है जो क्लाउड सीडिंग में यूज होता है, दिस कैन बी टॉक्सिक फॉर द एक्वाटिक लाइफ. बायो एक्यूमुलेशन अगेन वो डेफिनेशन दे रखी है, यू कैन रीड इट आउट. इंक्रीजिंग कार्बन फुटप्रिंट. क्लाउड सीडिंग थ्रू ड्राई आइस, that is carbon dioxide. Dry ice is actually carbon dioxide stored at cryo temperatures. So it is a source of greenhouse gas and this affects the climate change. Uncertainty and effectiveness. World Meteorological Organization adopted guidelines in 2017 advising the members not to perform weather modification activities without considering the high levels of uncertainty, ineffectiveness and potential harms involved. Then not all types of clouds are suitable. Clouds must be deep enough and must be of a suitable temperature between -10 and -12 degrees Celsius to be seeded effectively. So these technical requirements also need to be kept into mind. Then disturbing the hydrological cycle. Definitely you are making artificial rainfalls. So you are disturbing the natural hydrological cycle of the earth. Okay, this was an important topic. Conclusion you can read through, not much to explain. चलो अब आते हैं on our news in shorts. I think the video is going considerably long. Shorts में अभी we have 20 news to discuss. तो security का section कल करेंगे and we'll be doing science and tech area. ठीक है? चलो. Or I'll be releasing one more video today itself on social issues and ethics. ठीक है? We'll be seeing how to conduct it. फिलहाल ये करते हैं complete. तो आज के सेशन में हम सिर्फ environment करेंगे. चलो. UN's High Seas Treaty, adopted by the Intergovernmental Conference on Marine Biodiversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction. The High Seas Treaty aims at taking stewardship of ocean on behalf of present and future generations. So this treaty is aiming at taking stewardship of the ocean, or you can say taking the responsibility of the ocean, that is adopting an ocean on behalf of the present and future generations. It has been adopted under UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on Laws for Sea. It is legally binding in nature and it will only enter into force once the 60 countries have ratified it. Key highlights: strengthening resilience and contains provisions based on polluter pays principle. Polluter pays principle means whosoever is polluting will pay for its mitigation. Parties must assess potential environmental impacts of any planned activities beyond their jurisdictions. That is, the parties to this agreement, to this treaty, they have to assess the potential environmental impacts of any planned activities that are even beyond their jurisdiction. That is, even if some other nations are planning some activities that are going to affect the climate, they can assess those potential impacts and they can take actions against it. Offer guidance, including through an integrated approach to ocean management that builds ecosystem resilience to tackle the adverse effects of climate change and ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is basically accumulating of the amount of carbon dioxide into oceans. Recognizing rights and traditional knowledge of the indigenous people and the local communities. It aims to establish a large-scale marine protected areas in international waters, which protects the marine biodiversity of the high seas. It also calls for setting up of a conference of parties to oversee and enforce the compliance with the treaty's terms. Okay. Then Bonn Climate Meet, again an important topic because it has been the part of previous years. Bonn Climate Meet was held to set the agenda and preparation for the COP28 to be held at Dubai. COP is the Conference of Parties. So this meeting was held to set the agenda for COP28 that is scheduled to be held in Dubai. Now, what were the key discussions? A draft framework for global stock take was released, GST. It is an exercise aimed at assessing the country's progress against climate change. The first GST will take place in COP28 as mandated by 2015 Paris Agreement. Global stocktake is basically a kind of stock report on the climate change methods adopted या climate change mitigation methods adopted by the countries. पहला global stocktake होगा COP28 में जो कि दुबई में ऑर्गेनाइज किया जाएगा. Then the mitigation work program set up at COP26 at Glasgow in 2021 for climate action, focusing on increasing emission cuts. The developing countries have complained that the developed countries are yet to offer the finance and technology transfers to achieve their emission targets. Then a loss and damage principle was discussed, which was the result of COP27. COP27 was conducted recently. COP26 Glasgow में conduct हुआ है and COP28 is going to be conducted in Dubai. Global stocktake जो होगा that will be out of COP28 में होगा पहली बार. COP26 में we have come up with a mitigation work program जिसमें कि developed countries have to contribute to the developing countries for their mitigation targets or for meeting their emission targets, right? And then a loss and damage principle, which has been finalized in COP27, was also discussed in this meeting. Bonn climate change. Bonn meeting is related to the climate change. Developed and developing countries were divided on how it would be funded. So under loss and damage principle, it is a kind of polluter pay principle that has come up in COP26. You must know in what what principle has originated. The new collective qualified goals, which was agreed upon by 2015 Paris Conference for Climate Financing prior to 2025, is set to meet its target. Then the new collective qualified goals जो कि decide हुए थे कि 2015 में Paris Conference में decide हुए थे, 2025 इसकी deadline थी. So now it has been evaluated कि they are set to miss their targets. Then the developed countries are reluctant and called for viewing NCQG as a collective goal for all developed and developing countries. Okay. So developed countries are basically preventing themselves from taking part in any kind of environmental responsibility. So they are calling that the new collective qualified goals are basically a collective goal for both the developed and the developing countries. क्यों करती हैं ऐसा developed countries? We'll be discussing जब mains PYQ session हम करेंगे. So in detail I'll be telling you what are the agendas how developing countries are working on this. Related news, European Investment Bank that is expected to back the debt for nature swap this year. Debt for nature swap is an arrangement in which countries cut on their debt in return for the conservation commitments. Okay. So coming on to the next topic, that is the Paris Finance Meet. Summit for New Global Financing Pact concluded recently in Paris, France. Summit objective is to boost crisis financing for low-income states and ease their debt burdens, reform post-war financial systems, and free up funds to tackle the climate change. That is, in a way, they are opening up the funds for all of the countries so that they can invest these funds into climate change. उनका debt burden reduce कर रहे हैं, post-war financial systems को reform करेंगे, and funds को free up करेंगे. ठीक है, तो एक तरीके से open कर रहे हैं उनकी funds को so that they can invest in climate change. What are the key announcements made? Additional lending capacity of $200 billion of multi-development banks would be unlocked for emerging economies. World Bank announced disaster clauses for the debt deals that would suspend the debt payments in case of extreme weather events. $100 billion is to be provided to poor countries through SDRs in the form of currency provided by IMF. Recycling of the SDRs from rich countries to poor countries had been proposed to expand the amount of concessional finance to the developing countries. SDRs are basically the special drawing rights that are provided under the IMF funds. क्या होता है ये in detail हम economy जब पढ़ेंगे static में we'll be dealing with it. यहाँ because it's a very big story to explain you, तो यहाँ पर it's not possible to do that. ठीक है. फिलहाल you must know this, IMF एक international organization है जो कि credit crunch के समय पर loans देती है. ये लोन्स जो आते हैं ये इन्हीं कंट्रीज के कंट्रीब्यूशन से आते हैं. दे आर इन द फॉर्म ऑफ SDRs that are provided in lieu of whatever the countries are contributing to this body. Then the new 2.5 billion euro Just Energy Transition Partnership deal was announced for Senegal to increase renewable share in the energy mix. Momentum on polluter taxes accelerated. Pollution tax is a tax levied on a person who pollutes the environment. I've told you polluter pay principle. Then a global export review on debt, nature and climate to assess impact of debt on low and medium income countries' capacity. UN unveiled a call to action on Paris-aligned climate markets with the goal of covering at least 60% of the global emissions. Long overdue, that is $100 billion climate finance goal will be delivered this year. This has been promised by the developed countries. This is the amount that the developed countries have to provide to the climate change actions. Global Environment Facility approves the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. The Global Environment Facility Council meet was held in Brazil. Important fact. Its governing body has approved the establishment of a new fund, Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, to finance the implementation of Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It will be launched at the next GEF Assembly in Canada by August 2023. It will draw in capital from the governments, private sector, philanthropic organizations, and will focus on 8 thematic action areas, namely biodiversity conservation, restoration, land or sea use, and spatial planning, etc. It acknowledges the important roles and contribution of the indigenous people as custodians of biodiversity. The 3 principles that guides a country's allocation of resources for Global Biodiversity Framework Fund are: number 1, the allocation system must accommodate the financial contributions on a rolling basis, must consider the special needs of the least developed countries and small island developing states. It must acknowledge that the biodiversity is not evenly distributed across the globe and some areas have a greater potential to contribute to global biodiversity than the others. Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Fund was adopted by COP15 at Montreal of UN Convention on Biological Diversity. It has set 23 targets to be achieved by 2030, which includes 30% conservation of land and sea and 30% restoration of the degraded systems. ये सारी सिर्फ आपके लिए टर्मिनोलॉजीज इंपॉर्टेंट है, कौन सा फंड और कौन सा प्लान किस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में या किस मीटिंग में डेवलप हुआ, दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर योर प्रीलिम्स पर्सपेक्टिव। इसके अलावा जो ये फाइंडिंग्स निकालते हैं वो फाइंडिंग्स उतनी एज सच इंपॉर्टेंट होती नहीं है, एक दो फाइंडिंग्स यू मस्ट रिमेंबर सो दैट यू कैन मेंशन इट इन योर मेंस आंसर। GEF क्या है? ग्लोबल एनवायरमेंट फैसिलिटी इज अ मल्टी स्टेक होल्डर पार्टनरशिप to tackle various environmental issues established during 1992 Rio Earth Summit of UNFCCC। अगेन कौन सी बॉडी कब डेवलप हुई है, उसका फंक्शन क्या है, बस इतना आपको पता होना चाहिए। कुछ अगर वो रिपोर्ट्स निकाल रही है तो वो रिपोर्ट्स की टर्मिनोलॉजी से नाम पता होना चाहिए। Global Environment Fund funding is provided by participating donor countries and mobilized through a replenishment process every 4 years. It serves as a financial mechanism to 5 conventions: CBD, UNFCCC, Stockholm Convention on POPs, UN Convention to Combat Desertification and the Minamata Convention on Mercury। क्या है ये सारी कन्वेंशन? ये जब हम एनवायरमेंट पढ़ेंगे तो डिटेल में विल बी सीइंग इट। Structure of GCF: the GEF assembly is composed of all 185 member countries or participants including India. GEF Council is the main governing body with 32 members appointed by the constituencies of GEF member countries. Its secretariat is based in Washington, DC. Important facts you must remember for your prelims. Then World Environment Day 2023, it marks the completion of 50 years of its establishment on 5th June 2023. Observed on 5th June as a part of UNEP's development program. Every year, the World Environment Day has a specific host country and a theme. So this year, it has a West African country as the host country of Cote d'Ivoire in partnership with Netherlands. Theme was to beat plastic pollution. 45th Environmental Day, World Environment Day, was hosted by India. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has launched 2 schemes on this World Environment Day, named as Amrit Dharohar and Mishti. Mishti has been announced in this year's budget. Basically, Mangrove Initiative for Shoreline Habitats and Tangible Inputs. UNEP क्या है? You can have a look over it. Intergovernmental organization है, June 1972 में, कीनिया में, नायरोबी कीनिया में it has its headquarters. Global environmental agenda set करती है, 193 member countries. Other key information you can see, it works under the umbrella of UN 2030 agenda. Structure it's chaired by executive director, depends on voluntary contribution for the 95% of its income. And it also administers or provides secretariat functions to many multilateral agreements. Reports क्या क्या है? Global Environment Outlook, Adaptation Gap, Triple Emergency and Cooling Emissions and Policy Synthesis Report. ये सारे important facts हैं which you must remember for your prelims. Explain करने के लिए इसमें कुछ भी नहीं है. Climate change and food choices. A recent study highlighted the importance of bringing changes in food choices and dietary habits to reduce the emissions and global warming. So what does the research say? That food consumption in 5 highest emitting countries, China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, US, was responsible for more than 40% of the global food supply chain emissions. Food choices, how do food choices contribute? Shift in diets to animal-based products like red meat, dairy, and farm shrimp, resulting in increased ruminant enteric emissions and deforestation. पहली चीज तो ये है कि एनिमल बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स पे जो हम शिफ्ट कर रहे हैं उससे क्या होता है कि जो एंटेरिक एमिशंस है, दैट इज रुमिनेंट्स के जो एमिशंस हैं, द लाइक ह्यूमन बीइंग्स आर ईटिंग दीज एनिमल बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स, when the human beings die their body is degraded, so that release some emission into the environment, and apart from that it also increases the emissions from the basically the organisms that eat the deteriorated bodies or deteriorated flesh of animals. Then preference to packaged and processed goods. This is one of the reasons of climate change effects. Globalization of food choices. It increases emission due to transport and refrigeration. Why? Because today we require each food each time. Seasonal fruit का तो scene है ही नहीं आज की डेट में. We eat everything in every season. So that storage requires a large amount of transportation and refrigeration. Again, refrigeration releases CFCs into the environment. Transformation releases several gases like sulfur oxides and nitrogen oxides into the environment, persistent organic pollutants into the environment. Okay, widespread consumption of unsustainably produced foods and food wastage. At least 6% of the global greenhouse gas emissions come from the wasted. Way forward, promoting plant-rich diets or plant-based proteins such as beans, grains, etc. Alternatives such as lab-grown meat can be taken, preferring locally produced and seasonal fruit, prioritizing unpackaged and sustainably farmed whole products, minimizing the food wastage. Subsidies and climate change. According to a recent report by World Bank, subsidies don't help fight climate change. This is an important report that subsidies are not helping fight the climate change. Report highlights the negative consequences of inefficiently subsidizing agriculture, fishing, and fossil fuel sectors, which is actually exacerbating the climate change. How? Let us see. These subsidies exceed about 8% of the global gross domestic product. The distribution of subsidies across sectors and countries is highly skewed and uneven. Effects of subsidies. Agricultural subsidies are responsible for the loss of 2.2 million hectares of forest cover per year, or it is responsible for 14% of the global deforestation. Because agricultural subsidies and agricultural farms are enhancing, so they are cutting down the forest for it. Then fossil fuel usage incentivized by the subsidies is a key driver of 7 million premature deaths each year. Fisheries subsidies is a key driver of dwindling fish stocks, oversized fishing fleets, and falling profitability. Then coming on to draft green credit program implementation rules. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change have notified draft green credit program implementation rules 2023. It has decided to institute green credit program under EPA and issued these draft rules. So what are the draft rules? You can just have a reading over it once. Okay. Objectives एक बार read कर लेना. These are the draft rules that you can read over. Not very much important क्योंकि जब तक ये implement नहीं होते हैं, किसी act के form में नहीं आते हैं, तब तक they are just the draft rules, yet they are not finalized. ठीक है. This was announced during the Union Budget 2022-23 for realizing the vision of Mission Life. Mission Life in detail I have already covered in Yojana. You can go and watch that video. Okay. Then moving on to short-lived halogens. Again, an important topic. What are short-lived halogens? As per a recent study, oceans cool the planet by releasing short-lived halogens. Contribute 8 to 10% of the cooling. Short-lived halogens have a lifetime of less than 6 months, and they are the gases that contain halogen elements like chlorine, bromine, iodine. So how do the oceans release it? The marine phytoplankton and algae, as well as the abiotic sources from ocean and tropospheric chemistry. So basically these marine unicellular organisms, while they digest the marine waste, they are releasing these halogen gases. Impact. Short-lived halogens from oceans reduces warming by depleting the ozone and reduces the formation of cooling aerosols. SLH increase the methane's lifetime in the atmosphere and increase the levels of water vapor. So it is basically increasing the methane's stay. Methane is a long-term pollutant. So methane is a long-term, short-term pollutant, a short-lived pollutant. It increases the methane's lifetime in the atmosphere, which is further deteriorating the ozone layer, and thus it is increasing the level of water vapor in the air. क्योंकि ये हीट को मेंटेन कर रहा है अर्थ पे, so it is increasing the level of water vapors. Then coming on to lead rating system, what is this all about? India outperforms US and China on leadership on energy and environmental design, net zero certifications. Lead rating system provides a framework for a healthy, efficient, carbon and cost-saving green buildings. Okay, so it's a rating system for green infrastructure. Globally recognized certification system developed by US Green Building Council. किसने build किया है? US Green Building Council. It achieves and recognizes building at 4 certification levels: certified, silver, gold, platinum. It is administered in India by Indian Green Building Council. Then these are some points you can go through. Lead zero क्या है ये देख लेते हैं. So lead zero is basically the projects that have reached the net zero or net positive status in the categories of carbon, energy, and water or waste. India has 73 LEED Zero certified projects comprising 45% more than 150 total LEED Zero certifications. Nearly 1/3 of all carbon emissions in India come from building and construction sector. That is why it is important. Haryana and Tamil Nadu are the leading states in certifications. Important fact. India's DLF group is the leader globally in total LEED Zero certifications. Griha is India's own green building rating system, green rating for integrating habitat assessment. ठीक है, एक तरीके से rating system है for the countries for promoting green infrastructure. Then coming on to National Water Awards, President of India conferred 4th National Water Awards. Prominent winners are Madhya Pradesh as the best state and Ganjam district in Odisha as the best district. What are National Water Awards? Let's see to it. First launched in 2018 by Department of Water. Second and third editions 19 और 20 में दिए गए. Awards were not given in the year 2021 due to COVID. And objective, you know, it's a very common objective to encourage these stakeholders towards water resource management in the country. Okay. Incentivizing mechanism. Then desiccation tolerant vascular plants. So let's see what is this. New study discovered 62 desiccation tolerant vascular plant species in India's western Ghats, having applications in agriculture. Desiccation tolerant plants are basically the plants that are capable to withstand extreme dehydration, losing up to 95% of their water content, and they revive themselves once the water is available again. Okay, so they have a phenomena that they can dry and yet survive with 95% of their water loss content, and they can revive themselves again the water is available. Plants resistant to desiccation are commonly known as resurrection plants. They can be vascular or they can be non-vascular. Vascular का मतलब होता है vascular tissues जिसमें present होते हैं. That is xylem and phloem. Xylem is the vascular tissue to store water. Phloem is the vascular tissue to store food. In tropical regions, they are predominant occupants of rock outcrops. Rock outcrops are the visible exposures of bedrock or other geological formations at the surface of Earth. Moving on further to protosterol biota. According to a recent study, protosterol biota inhabited the underwater world over 1.6 billion years ago. That is Proterozoic era. These microscopic organisms belong to eukaryotes. What are eukaryotes? See, while we study cell, we study two kinds of organisms. One are prokaryotes and one are eukaryotes. When we study cell, we see cell as an organelle which has nucleus. Okay, nucleus is one of the important organelles of the cell. Now, this nucleus has a nuclear wall around it. Every cell has a nucleus, right? But there are certain cells which lack this nuclear membrane, and then there are certain cells which have this nuclear membrane. Okay, so the difference between the eukaryotes and prokaryotes lie here only. So the eukaryotes are the cell. Eu in biology means true. Eu means true. So they have a true nucleus, that is they have the complete nuclear structure with the nuclear membrane. तो eukaryotes वो organisms होते हैं जो nucleus जिनका nuclear membrane के अंदर में bound होता है. Prokaryotes are false nucleus, that is they do not have a nuclear membrane. Nuclear membrane is absent. ठीक है? So these microscopic organisms belong to eukaryotes category and are the source of evolution of the life on Earth. Eukaryotes were the single-celled or multicellular organisms whose cell contain a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. Modern forms of eukaryotes include fungi, plants, animals, and single-celled organisms such as amoeba. Ban on drugs harmful for vultures. So diclofenac was already banned for the vultures as it was having harmful effects. Now, apart from this, they have also Drugs Technical Advisory Board has also banned 2 more drugs which are harmful to vultures. DTAB agreed to prohibit manufacture, sale, and contribution of the drugs ketoprofen and aceclofenac. Diclofenac already बैन कर रखा था, अब इन्होंने ketoprofen और aceclofenac भी बैन किया है to conserve the vultures. DTAB is the highest statutory decision-making body on technical matters related to the drugs in the country. It is a part of CDSCO in Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Ketoprofen, aceclofenac, diclofenac, and nimesulide are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs used in veterinary practice that have been proven toxic to vultures and other birds of prey. ठीक, तो इनको वेट्स में यूज किया जाता है. वेटरनरी प्रैक्टिस मतलब एनिमल्स के ट्रीटमेंट में यूज किया जाता है. एंड vultures are the scavenger birds, so that is why this directly goes into the vultures when they scavenge over the bodies of such animals. ठीक, इनको पेन किलर्स के फॉर्म में यूज किया जाता है इन दी एनिमल्स. डाइक्लोफेनाक इज ऑलरेडी बैंड इन इंडिया. अब इन्होंने एसिक्लोफेनाक और केटोप्रोफेन को भी बैन कर दिया. Some NSAIDs are not fully metabolized by vultures and they cause damage to the bird's kidneys. Treated cattle metabolize NSAIDs within 3-4 days and therefore do not pose a threat to vulture if they die after such a period has elapsed. A total of 9 species of vultures are found in India. You must know all these 9 species. Population of white-backed vulture, slender-billed vulture, and long-billed vulture. All 3 are critically endangered and has declined drastically. ठीक, ये सारी 9 species आपको पता होनी चाहिए. इसके अलावा 3 critically endangered है: white-backed vulture, slender-billed vulture, and long-billed vulture. This must be known to you. Then coming on to the next point, that is river sand mining. NGT has made it mandatory to obtain consent from the concerned State Pollution Control Board for river sand mining. It directed MOFCC to issue guidelines within 2 months to ensure that it is uniformly applicable. No sand mining will be allowed to continue in the country without obtaining the state consents after 1st September 2022. It's the extraction of sand from the river bed. It is classified, sand is classified as a minor mineral under MMDR Act and the administrative control vests with the state government. Impact of sand mining, you know, all the negative impacts are there. Alter riverbed, destroy habitat of destroy habitat of the aquatic animals. Initiatives taken to curb sand mining. Sustainable sand mining management guidelines have been given by MOEFCC. Then sand mining framework presented by Ministry of Mines. Okay. Then coming on to marine noise pollution, the Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, CMF, has released a report to address a major threat to the marine species, that is noise pollution. Report focuses on 3 major sources of noise pollution like shipping, seismic airgun service, and pile driving. Seismic airgun service are conducted for oil and gas exploration. Pile driving are conducted for offshore wind farms and other marine infrastructures. Solution offered: alterations in ship design, propeller technology, marine vibrosis, a technology designed to produce controlled vibration as compared to the air gun. Important point: lower frequency seismic signals for the oceans. Okay. Then Indian Ocean Dipole and El Nino. It's a very important part as respect to UPSC. However, यहाँ पे we will see only what's the news all about. When sir will be teaching with static geography, he'll be teaching you in detail. You need to have a very good explanation over this topic, El Nino and La Nina. Okay. While the El Nino is already firmly established in the Pacific Ocean this year, a positive IOD development is also being forecasted by different meteorological agencies. IOD is defined by the difference in sea surface temperature between the eastern and western sides of the Indian Ocean. Relations between El Nino, Southern Oscillation, and IOD. The air circulation in Indian Ocean is from west to east and in opposite direction at the upper level. In a normal year, the warm water from the West Pacific cross over the Indian Ocean and make the air rise and strengthens the air circulation. During El Nino, what happens? The western side of the Pacific is cooler than normal. In El Nino, what happens? The situations are reversed. The western side of the Pacific is cooler than normal, because of which the Indian Ocean side also gets cooler and helps in the development of positive IOD. That is, IOD का हमने क्या देखा था, difference between eastern and western sides of the Indian Ocean. So since during El Nino, the Pacific Ocean is cooler than normal, why it happens, you will be studying in geography when sir will be teaching you static ocean. ठीक है, वो होता क्या है लीनो में, अभी के लिए इतना याद रखो कि कंडीशंस रिवर्स हो जाती हैं, बिकॉज ऑफ विच द इंडियन ओशन साइड्स आल्सो गेट कूलर, और ये एक पॉजिटिव इंडियन ओशन डायपोल बनाता है. सिमिलरली नेगेटिव इंडियन ओशन डायपोल बनता है ला नीना से, जो कि एल नीनो की रिवर्स कंडीशन होती है. Researchers believe that while external factors such as ENSO can trigger IOD, many times it's caused by the local circulations also. ठीक है, the external factors भी responsible है and local circulations are also responsible for it. Positive IOD will help rainfall along the African coast and the Indian subcontinent while suppressing it in the Eastern Indian Ocean. And opposite happens during negative IOD or La Nina. Compared with ENSO effects, the impact of Indian Ocean dipole is much weaker, but they can subdue the impact of ENSO. ये in detail में आपको तभी समझ में आएगा when you are clear with your basics. Then coming on to the cyclones in the Arabian Sea. So we have cyclone Biparjoy, earlier headed towards Pakistan, now predicted to move towards northern Gujarat coast. A rainfall is expected on June 15, gone, not so important for you. You must know Biparjoy cyclone kahan ka tha. Cyclones in Arabian Sea usually do not move towards Indian coast. Most of them, more than 75%, move northwest or northwestwards, with a trajectory directed towards Pakistan, Iran, or Oman. According to a recent study, 2% increase have been seen in the frequency of cyclonic storms in the Arabian Sea, making India's west coast more vulnerable to these cyclones. अभी तक क्या था, इंडिया में जो majority cyclones आते थे वो Bay of Bengal से आते थे. But now there has been a 52% rise in the frequency of cyclonic storms coming from the Arabian Sea. Cyclonic storms are increasing in the Arabian Sea. Why? Again, an important point, because UPSC asks statement-based questions on these topics. Because warming of both the sea surface temperature and the deeper waters in the Arabian Sea, because of global warming, they are even warming at the deeper levels. Okay? Then warm conditions are very much favorable to the rapid intensification of cyclones, so it has the potential to sustain the strength for a longer period. Then increasing frequency of El Nino Modoki phenomena, which makes conditions conducive for the cyclone formation over Arabian Sea. El Nino Modoki has been a previous year question in the preliminary examination. When sir will be dealing with the prelims PYQ session, he'll be referring that question to you. So एल नीनो मोडोकी फिनोमेना जो है वो साइक्लोन फॉर्मेशन अरेबियन सी पे कंड्यूसिव कैसे बना देता है, क्योंकि ये वार्म मॉइस्ट कंडीशंस बनाता है सेंट्रल पैसिफिक ओशन. ओके, और ईस्टर्न और पैसिफिक ओशन में ड्राई एंड कोल्ड कंडीशंस बन जाती है. अब क्योंकि सेंट्रल पैसिफिक में वार्म मॉइस्ट कंडीशंस है, तो दिस लीड्स टू हीटिंग ऑफ द इंडियन ओशन आल्सो. ठीक है, सो दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई द अरेबियन सी इज heated up. Earthquake in Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, several mild intensity earthquakes. Geology of Himalayas. See, why do earthquakes occur in this Himalayan region? Due to movement of tectonic plates. Indian plate is driving under subduction, the Eurasian plate in the northeastern direction. It's very static things to know. Either you might be knowing it or you will be studying it when we will be doing the static geography areas. Okay? These are all static portions too. I'll be leaving it for time being, because either you will be knowing it if you are done with these areas, or if you are an entirely new student, we don't have time here to explain it. जब static अभी हम करेंगे, geography का जब cover करेंगे, then we will be studying about it. ठीक है? Next is groundwater extraction tilted Earth spin. A new study found that groundwater pumping has tilted the planet nearly 80 centimeters east between 1993 and 2010 alone. The planet's geographic north and south poles are where its axis intersects the surface. However, they are not fixed. The axis and hence the poles fluctuate due to variations in the Earth's mass distribution. ठीक है, तो हमारे जो जियोग्राफिक नॉर्थ साउथ पोल्स हैं ये फिक्स्ड नहीं, ये एक्सेस इसलिए टिल्ट होता रहता है जैसे कि जैसे जैसे अर्थ का मास यू डिस्ट्रीब्यूट। ठीक, अब ग्राउंड वाटर एक्सट्रैक्ट हो रहा है तो एक जगह से क्या हो रहा है, मास रिड्यूस हो रहा है। सिंस मास रिड्यूसिंग फ्रॉम वन प्लेस, तो अर्थ का टिल्ट इधर की तरफ जा रहा है। The water circulated across the planet determines how the mass is distributed across the planet, right? So that is affecting actually the tilt of the Earth's spin. So we are done with this environment portions. Okay. Since the video has already gone substantially long, so I'm skipping the society section today. However, society काफी छोटा सा section था, but चलो ठीक है, I'll be covering society and ethics separately. या तो आज ही एक वीडियो डाल देंगे या फिर कल मैगजीन फिनिश होने के बाद एक वीडियो सेपरेटली डाल देंगे on society and ethics. ठीक है, कल we'll be having science and tech, again an important portion and a very substantial portion when we see with the glimpse of current affairs. ठीक है, so bye bye for today. See you in the next video. Do like, share, and subscribe, and comment below if you like the videos or even if you dislike. You are free to comment, right? Suggest the measures, whatever you feel like that could be taken to make the explanation more better. Okay. So goodbye. See you tomorrow with the next video.